that, John. We got another donation. James Daniel says, thanks for the content. He's at 90% now. Still working my way to 100%. I mean, I would say don't stop, but as long as you rate 100% and you have the evidence to show that definitely do not stop fighting. Use a VSO, educate yourself, file your claims by yourself if that's what it takes. Don't stop.
Yeah, and again, I try to give as specific as answers as I can, of course, without knowing anything about a veteran's. There is a DBQ for insomnia, and it might be a psychological. Is that the one that goes on? Sometimes there is one that trips me sometimes, and it might be the one that's.
Yeah, insomnia is pyramided under mental health.
Yeah. So if that was the case, I would probably work with a medical provider you have a relationship with, who's willing to fill that DBQ out for you, and just ensure, right, that they have all the components that they need in order to be able to fill out a DBQ. Sometimes you can look on the DBQ itself, and it'll tell you exactly the criteria for the medical provider that is needed. So I'm pretty sure for like if you look up the mental health one, it's going to state specifically it has to be a MSW, a psychologist, psychiatrist, and I think the MSW has to be under supervision of a psychiatrist. And so you could look right at the top of that form, but I highly encourage you to look at that and find a medical provider who's willing to make a statement of as likely or more likely than not as a medical opinion.
All right. You got it. Chandler Dale says, hi guys, thanks for hosting this. Hey, thanks for coming. Without questions, there's no live stream, okay? So keep the questions coming. His question is about BDD claims. He says specifically in regards to getting conditions rated that you maybe haven't had the opportunity to get treatment for. For example, I'm still active and I'm about to start the BDD process. I'm wanting to claim shoulder pain with, obviously that's range of motion. Along with other claims that I do have in-service treatment for, but I don't have any shoulder complaints in my treatment record. Okay, we have another one. This is a long one. Here's the question. Will the VA be able to rate me since I'm still active duty doing a BDD claim? That's the question. He says, thanks. What do you got?
So, and I'll back up there a bit too, try and give as much perspective as I can for all these questions. So it's applicable to as many people as possible, right? So sometimes people get confused about these different claims types, and it was more confusing many years ago. The VA, since 2015, has gotten a lot better about helping to standardize the process for claims submissions. If you look, right, and literally everyone watching right now, you can on your phone or later or on another screen, right, you can look up a 526 EZ. It's very defined. It's very easy to find right on the VA's website. The very first decision you have to make when you fill out a 526 EZ, which is an application for compensation for disabilities at the VA, the very first decision you have to make is what type of claim do I want to file? Well, two of those most veterans cannot use, which is BDD and IDIS. BDD is Benefits Delivery at Discharge, possibly the dumbest acronym. I've always advocated, anytime I meet with anyone at the regional office, I'm always saying, like, can we rename that? There's got to be a cooler acronym that we can use than Benefits Delivery at Discharge, BDD. And then IDIS, Integrated Disability Evaluation System, I believe. Those are two partnerships between the DoD and the VA in order to get veterans service-connected disabilities while they're still in uniform. And so the way benefits delivery at discharge works is it really is an integrated office and partnership between DoD and VA, where they have the ability to literally deliver benefits at discharge. And so, theoretically, you could go from a DoD paycheck to a VA compensation check one day over the next. And so if you are 90 to 180 days out from separation, you could submit a BDD claim And your BDD claim is as promised by the VA, supposed to be adjudicated before your last day of separation. Now, I know Clay has probably heard of veterans who are 2 months after separation and they still haven't heard anything. There are plenty of scenarios very similar to this one where the VA might have a duty to assist in terms of obtaining additional information for you that could slow down the adjudication or the processing of the claim. But the promise has always been that it's supposed to be adjudicated. If you do your job, which is submit it between 90 and 180 days out, it should be decided upon before you get out, so you know definitively, right? Hey, this is my ETS date, and the next day I am eligible in receiving VA benefits. And so to answer your question, I think yes. So we work with veterans all the time that are struggling with this disability, but they're still on active duty. Go get seen for that thing, because an in-service event, right? You need 3 things to get a service-connected disability at the VA. It really only 3 things. Sometimes there's a 4th thing. I will mention 3. In-service event, a current diagnosis, and a nexus. If you have those three things, the VA really can't deny you. They can, and I've seen it. Actually, we see it here at the foundation more than we should, because the last one is chronic and continuous. But chronic and continuous isn't an issue for you because you're still active duty. You don't have to show that this has been an ongoing chronic thing since you got out, because you haven't gotten out yet. And so go get seen for it, because one appointment, one complaint can be used as your in-service event. We work with veterans all the time that their only in-service event 30 years after they separated is that they complained about it on their separation record. So for instance, we worked with a veteran the other day, got out of the military, got out of the Marines, early 90s. On their separation record, they complained about constant knee pain. And that's the only place that it existed in their entire service treatment records, was in that exit exam. Well, a year later, they had knee surgery. And it was 4 or 5 years later, they had a different knee surgery, like a scope or some sort of issue with their knee. And for the past 20 years, they've been getting treatment for their knee. They never thought to submit a knee claim. And so they come to us recently, we submit a knee claim, and we get them service connected for their knee. And we had the in-service event. It was their complaint in that exit exam. We had a current diagnosis of the knee condition, a bilateral knee condition. And the nexus was pretty easy for the VA to decide, even without having a private DBQ, because we could show that that has been a chronic and continuous disability since they separated, right? They had a knee condition not too long afterwards. Had they been denied, we could have submitted a supplemental claim and provided an independent medical exam showing that there's a positive nexus there. And in this case, we just didn't need it. But I think that answers your question. And so, yes, get treatment for your shoulder. Any complaint, any reference to your shoulder being an issue is and can be used as your in-service event. And in this case, if you complain of shoulder pain and you have any treatment for your shoulder, even if you don't have treatment for your shoulder, as part of the BDD program, they're going to send you to a compensation and pension exam. So that C&P examiner will have the opportunity to document a current active duty service member's shoulder condition. They will have the ability to document your symptoms right there on the disability benefits questionnaire. And most importantly, as a medical opinioner, as a medical examiner, they will have the ability to make a determination, right? I believe this current active duty service member's current shoulder condition is as likely, less likely, or more likely than not connected to their time in service.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely a solid answer. We've had 3 donations. Oh, relax, dude. We've had 3 donations. Nayo, yours went away. I took a picture of it on my phone. Don't worry, we're definitely going to get to it. Next Level Cash says audio's good now. Thank you. I'm glad the audio's good. He says that, look at this. Next Level Cash said he got 100% P&T yesterday. Congrats to you, dude. If you were in the Del K Graham office, you could ring the little bell there.
I'll go ring it. I'll take the computer. I'll go ring it for you.
He says got 100% P&T yesterday with sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea, secondary to PTSD approved. Thanks for all that information, dude. So Next Level Cash, he was on the very first stream that I had, which was only a few months ago. But it was cool. It's cool to see you actually go through the process and come out with 100% P&T. That's awesome, dude. That honestly makes my day. Congrats to you.
Yeah, honestly, congrats. You know, we always celebrate veterans getting to 100%, And it's actually unfortunate. Like there's veteran service organizations out there that like that kind of like stray away from that, almost as if like getting to 100% is nothing to celebrate. And every now and then you'll meet like a toxic veteran out there somewhere that's like getting to 100% is nothing to celebrate. Well, being 100% disabled isn't anything to celebrate. Getting the disability rating that you deserve and that you've been fighting for, sometimes for many years, is something to celebrate. And I think that's just one of those times where, like, in the veterans community, sometimes we're unnecessarily like toxic and crude towards each other. And actually, no one does that more than veteran service organizations. They'll feud and fight about culture of, who fought harder for this veteran, or if that veteran deserves benefits, or if that veteran deserves benefits. And here we always celebrate a veteran getting to 100%, because we know the VA is not going to give 100% to a veteran who's not deserving of it. If you don't have the records and documentation to show that a disability exists and that the symptoms exist, the VA is not going to give it to you. And so whenever you can, celebrate a veteran getting to 100%, because it is a beautiful and incredible thing, especially if it's T&P. So congrats. Definitely go through the state process. Get on your state's website, apply for the tax exemptions that exist there, if they exist there for whatever state you live in, and make sure that you're getting all the benefits that you're eligible for now at the Department of Veterans Affairs, to include free dental, and CHAMP VA. Submit your CHAMP VA application, because it could take 9 to 12 months for that thing to process.
Oh yeah, I want to get to Nayo's question, because
Yeah.
he paid a $5 sticker. Nayo, thank you so much. He's another longtime viewer of the channel. I appreciate that. He says, I've submitted a higher level review. Okay, I've signed an eviction notice. While filling out the HLR, it wouldn't let me submit the eviction notice online. I assume you're talking about being evicted from your home. John, what would his next steps be?
So, and that is one of the things about the higher level review process, is that you can't submit any additional evidence, right? So the claim and the merit of the evidence and the actual slate of evidence can't change in any way. And so, but your argument, I would guess in this case, is that you would like for yours to be decided faster because of course you're about to be evicted. And in that case, I would call, or have your representative call, if you do have a representative, the 1-800-827-1000 number, and ask to see if you can have your claim expedited. The alternative would be for your veteran service organization or representative or attorney, if you do have one, to like type up a 4138 or a statement from you, stating that and showing that and submitting that to your local regional office and requesting for expedition. The higher level reviews are disseminated across the country based off of the national work queue. I think there's a few places that the higher level review officers operate out of. One of the biggest ones that we see quite a bit is St. Petersburg, and that regional office is adjudicating a lot of these higher level reviews with higher level review officers. And so I have seen it before where we've requested an expedited higher level review, and it seemed like we got the same timeline that we probably would have gotten without it. Of course, when you submit an initial claim, you have the ability to indicate whether or not a veteran is homeless or is struggling with homelessness or housing security as a whole. And you can request that claim to be expedited. I would call 1-800-827-1000 and have a conversation with them as soon as possible and ask for your higher level review to be expedited. And then you can also submit that same request via quick submit, or via your veteran service organization to your regional office, or to the Veterans Benefits Administration, which is to your regional office, and request that to be expedited. But of course, that may not guarantee that you win that one. And so what you can also do is start building a claim strategy to submit for other claims. Work with your representative to see what other disabilities you might have, or if you think that one's going to be denied, you could start working towards a strategy for submitting a supplemental claim, and just attaching new and relevant evidence for that. One thing I would also urge you to do is, one of the largest programs in the entire country is called SSDF. something for veteran families, something supporting veterans. I forget this acronym all the time. It's hundreds of millions of dollars that comes out of the Department of Veterans Affairs every year that gets administered in local communities to give directly to veterans who are in housing crisis or might be about to be in housing crisis. And so almost every community across the country is covered by SSVF, Sierra, Victor, Foxtrot. And it is normally, for instance, here, for a long time, it was administered by Goodwill Industries. Goodwill had an employee who was a veteran, and he had a phone number. And you could call him up and say, hey, we've got a veteran who is homeless, and we're working on his VA claim. Can you help him with housing while we get him on his feet? And he would literally put him in a hotel room that night. And SSVF can pay for immediate housing. It can also pay to keep veterans in housing while their claim is being worked on. And it's provided through supplemental grant funding from the federal government, along with nonprofit income. And so SSVF is a huge one. And you can also reach out to the HUD-VASH office at your local VA hospital. So whatever your VA hospital is, wherever the closest one is to you, they're going to have an administrator that works for HUD-VASH, VASH. They have money to give directly to veterans who are about to be evicted in order to keep them in their housing while other VA benefits pick up. And so I would highly recommend you call 1-800-827-1000, see if you can get your claim expedited. But I would also urge you to reach out to some of the other programs that are there for veterans who are struggling with housing. I hope that helps, man. I really hope that helps.
Oh, no, I did not know any of that, honestly. Well, besides calling the VA, but that's a solid answer.
So our nonprofit, and this goes back to the question earlier, we allocate over $100,000 a year to distribute to the many thousands of veterans that we work with to help them if they're in financial need. We also have the ability to pay rent, pay mortgages. And so if you want to reach out to our foundation, you can fill out our intake form and indicate on there that you want help with financial assistance. And we have the ability to start VA claims while also giving some money to help a veteran who's in immediate crisis. Our issue is that ours tends to cap out. So we'll give some money directly to a landlord to keep a veteran in housing, and then we'll try and hand them off to another nonprofit or to the Department of Veterans Affairs in order to pick up that for the next many months while their claim is being decided that we're working on. So there's a lot of ways to help veterans, and there's a lot of programs out there to support veterans. Sometimes it depends on the individual community that you live in, but I hope that helps to be able to get your brain thinking about all the resources that are out there for veterans, even beyond compensation, which I have no doubt you're deserving of, and I hope your higher level review is favorable. But if it's not, you'll be glad that you reached out to some of these other organizations that can help create some sustainable income for you while you work on that claim profile or while you get yourself back on your feet.
Oh yeah, so we've had 2 more donations, guys. Thank you very much. Everything John just explained, all donations from this stream go straight to Del K. Graham. So Angela B has a super sticker. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Michael Walker, I met with him today as my daughter was screaming her head off, okay? He asked the question, if you had a C&P exam with LHI-VES-QTC, so a contracted C&P exam, and they tell you something like, and he quotes, I will recommend you for denial if you were not diagnosed in service, the VBA will allow you to only have C&P exams completed by the VHA. I think let's just add a question on there. Let's say you heard.
I was looking for the question.
Yeah, let's say you heard
it,
a C&P examiner said they'll recommend you for denial if you were not diagnosed in service. What would you do, John? Like if you're the veteran, what would you do in that instance?
Let me tell you all a story. quick little story. Right?
I'm so excited for this story.
I'm obviously a talker, right? So I was stationed out at Fort Rucker, 2016, 17. Felt great. Was training for an ultra marathon over many, many months. I kept losing weight and started feeling sick. Went down to the flight dock one day at Fort Rucker, and boom, he did some blood work, called me up a couple hours later. He said, you're an insulin-dependent diabetic. I said, what the heck is that? And he was like, you need to be on insulin the rest of your life. Like, you're a type 1 diabetic. And so got immediately grounded, immediately referred to med board. I go through the IDIS process, Integrated Disability Evaluation System. That one of those options right at the top of the 526, right next to standard claim, fully developed claim, or a BDD. The IDIS process sends you to a C&P examiner, and they send me to an evaluation, a C&P, a VA contracted C&P examiner for type 1 diabetes. And she's evaluating my diabetes. The first thing she says to me is, "You're way too young to be a diabetic." And I immediately thought to myself, like, oh, I'm screwed. This C&P examiner doesn't know the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And here I am. I have to be evaluated for her for a condition that she's already demonstrated to me that she might not know that much about. And, obviously there's babies that get diagnosed, 1-year-olds that get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes all the time. Of course, I was 27, but I was actually pretty old to be getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So the moral of the story is that C&P examiners are the lowest bidder, right? Anyone who's ever served in the military has probably gotten some crappy military issued something in the past, and it was likely because the military and the DoD and the VA, bid to the lowest bidder. And so it's not that C&P examiners are, loving and excited and motivated and incredible clinicians. Many of them are, I have no doubt, but there's always going to be bad apples. So the moral is that C&P examiner is wrong. C&P examiners can diagnose you. C&P examiners can give you positive medical opinions where they believe the medical nexus exists. And so maybe what they were stating is that they don't believe the medical nexus exists, and they're just expanding wildly on 38 CFR in ways that isn't true at all. But that C&P examiner is wrong. And you can always call the Department of Veterans Affairs, call the regional office, and request them to give you a different C&P examiner. You can request a different C&P exam. You can also work with a private doctor to get an independent medical opinion and get an independent medical exam that contradicts that one and supports you and your disability, one that is fair and it was fair and from a practitioner that is capable of making statements on that disability. I think that answers the question, but we're kind of, inferring what the question was, I think, right, Clay?
Oh yeah, no, you hit on the spot. The first thing, and I totally agree, the first thing I would do is call the VA and request another C&P exam. They're not legally obligated to give you one. And then, of course, personally, I'm a fan of independent medical opinions anyways. And in a previous stream with Dr. Sharma, he had said something that kind of put the light bulb in perspective for me. He said that he will spend all day working on one veteran and really examining that condition, doing the DBQ and writing that nexus. And the C&P exam lasts, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, right? Depending on what that exam is for. And so you have to take that into consideration. But just like you said, I've had good C&P exams, and me personally, I've had bad C&P exams. It is what it is. We have another donation. Guys, thank you very much. All donations go straight to Del K. Graham.
Thank you.
All right, from Sunset Raven, he says, former paratrooper. That's some Army stuff. I think that's all in your lane. From 01 to 08, he hurt his leg jumping and had surgery in 05. Has a 16-inch scar down his right leg, and that tingles. I assume there's pain associated with that. It got rated at 0%. How can I get that rating increased? 38 CFR, brother. John, go ahead.
I would say, you could do that one yourself or work with a veteran service officer. I would recommend I would probably, on a 526, put, scar for whatever knee, right, left knee, and then put increase, and then put, significantly worse since last evaluation. They're going to send you to a C&P examiner, possibly. But the only thing you need to put on like a 4138 for the cover letter would just be that, this, the status of this scar has changed since my last evaluation. This is a painful and unstable scar. The VA will compensate. The VA will service connect veterans for scars all the time. In fact, a couple of days ago, I was looking at a veterans claim profile for one of our volunteers who was struggling, and I'm just kind of passively looking through all their different disabilities, and I saw one that I hadn't seen yet, which was anthrax. So they got a 0% service connection for a scar from the anthrax shot. They got the anthrax shot, of course, in service, like many of us did, and it left a little bit of a scar, but it was rated at 0% because it wasn't considered painful and it wasn't considered unstable. So if you can show that you have evidence to support, right, that it's an unstable scar, for instance, maybe it's constantly flaking or it's reopening or there's issues with the scar or inflammation around the scar constantly, you could show that it was unstable. But you can also just submit a claim, an increase for that disability right on a 526, and just state that it is, constantly painful and document your symptoms on a cover letter. And you could submit that claim on your own, and they could give you a 10% rating for it. So, and that's kind of, sometimes, like other organizations that do like VA Claims Strategy with veterans, they might ask you, right, like is that the claim that you want to submit, right, or are there other disabilities that you possibly have that you're not service connected for that you also should submit for? So absolutely pursue every disability that you feel is underrated at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Also take the time to start really thinking about what other conditions might I be living with that are caused by service connected conditions that I could apply for as secondary. And so that answers your question, plus a little more. But you can look up, and in fact, there's a bunch of great free resources online for service connecting scars. But yours is probably going to be on a 526. Put the disability, the specific scar that's currently rated, put increase, sign that thing and send it up to the VA. And if you can show that, and document somewhere that you have, constant pain in it, you should get an increased rating for it. But also look online and look in 38 CFR where it talks about painful and unstable scars. And I think you'll be able to educate and understand the way the VA adjudicates those, and you should be able to apply that based off of the symptoms that you feel every day.
Yeah, no, I had a facial reaction because we just got a $50 donation.
Oh my God.
The biggest one yet. Storm Vet, brother, thank you so much. Appreciate that. All donations this stream go straight to Del K. Graham. That's I should have a tally mark. I'm gonna remember Storm Vet's name, and I'll add something to my streams of who has that highest ranking spot, right? Storm Vet, dude, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I will say, John, we have a ton of questions, so we're gonna start answering. Try and go down the line as fast as we can here.
I'll stay here all night. I got you.
So giving quality answers. Okay. LG, another longtime fan, brother. Thank you for showing up again. He says, currently rated for 50% for flat feet. He's going through the IDES process, which is a med board. I added the plantar fasciitis, which is like policeman's heel. So there's flat feet and then policeman's heel. Those are kind of the slang terms for that. And then his question is asking for my dad if he's receiving retirement from his civilian job. Can he claim TDIU? Okay, there's two questions here. One, can you get a separate rating for flat feet and policeman's heel? And two, if his dad is receiving retirement from his civilian job, can he claim TDIU?
So the first, I'll answer both. The first question is, I believe so, and I want to say I believe I have seen it, but it depends on the symptoms that the individual veteran is experiencing. So every now and then, as you're reading across the internet or you're watching videos here on YouTube, you may hear the word pyramiding. The VA will not compensate you for two different disabilities that share the same symptoms, if that makes sense. So a common one, right, is veterans will often have PTSD and anxiety, right? And they'll have two separate diagnoses for those. But the VA is only going to pay you for one of them, right? Because it's very often that mental health conditions will have common symptomology. And so it'll often be referred to as pyramiding if they were going to, give you a 50% rating for PTSD and a 30% rating for anxiety, and then pay you for both of them, right? You're going to get one. You're going to get the higher of the two. And so it's very common that we'll see veterans that will have both of those different disabilities, but because the symptoms are shared, and it's hard for C&P examiners, even independent medical examiners sometimes, to differentiate between different disabilities and how the symptoms overlap, you might get rated for both of them, compensated for one of them. And so, but it does depend on the severity of the condition. So without actually looking at your feet or having a complex conversation with you about the impact of that disability on your life, and then seeing your medical records, it would be hard to know for sure. But I always tell veterans, right? Like there's never really a harm in submitting both, right? Assuming that you do have legitimate diagnoses for both. And they're both chronic disabilities that you live with. We talk about, as an accredited VSO, we often talk about the word chronic, and we use the word chronic a lot because veterans will often forget that the VA is not going to pay you for anything that's not chronic. You have to have a chronic disability that you're living with in order for 38 CFR to be able to pay you for it. And so really look at, are these two chronic disabilities that I live with that share separate symptoms that I can get individually rated and individually compensated for? I hope that helps at least have a conversation with either a VSO or an agent that you're working with, or even when you go to submit that claim on your own, really think about the difference between these two separate diagnoses and the different symptoms that they might have. And that'll be really important when you go to sit down with the C&P examiner to show that those are two separate disabilities that have two separate diagnoses, or two separate types of symptoms as well too, especially as they manifest in your foot. Man, I hope that helps.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
You hit it right on the head. What you'll often see too for like flat feet is you can also be rated for range of motion. And so if another disability affects range of motion, that's where you'll really see. That's just one example. There are many examples.
Yep.
Okay.
And then,
this question.
and there was the other portion. There was the other portion of the question.
Oh, that's right. So I read them both because I thought they
Yeah.
went together. Totally didn't.
TDIU, also IU, right? So total disability based off of individual unemployability, commonly referred to as IU, individual unemployability. It's impacted by income. And so that is, a lot of veterans get really confused by that. How often do we hear veterans saying like, oh, I don't want to get to 100% because I want to keep working. We've literally worked with very wealthy veterans who are 100%. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, hey, sir, hey, John, I don't even need this disability. I'm like, well, save it for your kids. You know what I mean? Like put it in the bank, put it in a retirement account, put it in an investment account and give it to your kids. Cause I'm sure one day they'll be grateful that you got the benefits you were eligible for based off the disabilities that you have and you're getting paid for them. Now for TDIU, you can't make more than the poverty limit as set by the federal government. Excuse me. And so I think this year it's $13,000 or $14,000.
Yeah, I think it's around like 14.5.
So they can absolutely work. I just would encourage you not to make more than that. But it is important to note that is active income. So if the veteran is obtaining passive income, let's say a veteran is TDIU, getting $3,900 a month, and it's total and permanent, they may have 10 homes that they own, and they live in Texas. They live down in Dallas, and they live off of the income from all of these rental properties. That wouldn't be considered active income because that's not considered gainful employment, right? That's passive income, that's investment income. You may also be TDIU and you have millions of dollars in investment accounts, and every month you're getting all these, all of these dividends or all this money from separate investments, right? That's considered passive income. And so, you're not gaining it from being gainfully employed. You still can't work because you have this severe disability. And so you're eligible for TDIU. So, yes.
Oh, yeah. Moving on to Jolly Greens. His question, we can't answer it. We can't. You'll see what his question is. But he does mention MST, which is military sexual trauma. And I did want to do a shameful plug here. On March 2nd, we're going to have Miss Stephanie come on the live and talk about her experience with military sexual trauma, PTSD, and the VA disability claims process. I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be very powerful and emotional for her as well. But his question is, will Congress... Okay, so MST back pay bill was passed into law after he left the Army. I'm assuming Army. Will Congress pass a bill that piggybacks that idea with PTSD, amputation, TBI, and other static disabilities? I don't know.
After BT, MST. So I actually, and man, I know a lot of veterans bills, and I would have to look up what he refers to, or what Jolly Green refers to when they say MST back pay bill. And so I could take a couple minutes to look into that and to figure out what that actually is. I know I've spoken to veterans before who have gotten confused about legislation that helped veterans get dishonorable discharges upgraded more easily. And I actually don't think this is one of those times. And so I will, and excuse me, I'm still recovering from a cold that I had like 3 weeks ago. And so I will look up for a second to see if I can help you, Jolly Green, here, and see if there's anything I can find on the VA's website or Congress's website to help me. But I actually don't know off the top of my head, and I really apologize. Clay, do you have any idea as to what he might be talking about there?
None at all. That's why I did that. I don't know, man. But as you're looking that up, let's definitely circle back. You keep doing that. I'm going to keep going down the line. LG says he's been diagnosed with cubital and carpal tunnel, which is nerve. So cubital is nerve damage, and carpal tunnel it's like a pinched nerve. Will that be a combined rating? I'm like 90% sure that's a yes, because they're both nerve damage, and the VA will take the higher of the two, right? Same thing with radiculopathy. You can't have nerve damage in your legs and then claim nerve damage from the knee below and then claim nerve damage from the ankles down. It'll all be roped under one because that's a whole extremity. And so the VA claim will be like cubital left extremity, right? Radiculopathy right extremity, and the VA will kind of just rope all that nerve damage all into one, okay?
Yeah, so it says, so this is House Resolution 7335, became law December of last year. And this might be the bill. It specifically states to improve coordination between the Veterans Health Administration and the Veterans Benefits Administration with respect to claims for compensation arising from military sexual trauma. And so I've seen bills similar to this before, right? So this is like MST Claims Coordination Act, and it removes barriers from the Veterans Benefits Administration in obtaining records from the Veterans Health Administration, right? You have to think of these two separate organizations as that, right? The Veterans Health Administration, like VA hospital systems and clinics, they have separate directors from the Veterans Benefits Administration. These two organizations don't talk to each other very well at all. In fact, because of HIPAA, there's actually a lot of intentional barriers between them. I think without reading, the thousands of words and paragraphs here, I think this is one of those opportunities in order to better benefit veterans who are applying for military sexual trauma. It allows for the Veterans Benefits Administration to more easily obtain mental health treatment records that are relevant for military sexual trauma without having to go through like all this red tape at the VHA in order to be able to release those documents. Jolly Green, hop back in the chat and re-ask that in a different way if I haven't helped at all, because I really do want to help. Military sexual trauma is a type of claim that we do a lot here, and I feel very passionately about. We did a lot of those last year, unfortunately, and helped very, very, very many veterans get access to a mental health rating because of MST. And so please hop back in the chat and let me know if I helped in any way.
I would never have been able to answer that like you just answered that. So it was spot on. Okay. Barbara Watt says, my husband's had surgery to remove his bladder due to treatment he received for his prostate cancer. He now has a colonoscopy back. He's 100% P&T. She wants to know if he can file an SMC for the surgery of removing his bladder that was due to his prostate cancer.
There's a lot of different SMCs, and a lot of veteran service officers stray away from SMCs when it starts to applying for them, and sometimes they'll like circumnavigate conversations from veterans about them because they can be so complicated. SMCs are entitlements that the Veterans Benefits Administration are supposed to be able to proactively find and administer on a veteran's claim profile if they see that they need it. And there are a lot of different types of SMC. So, for instance, a veteran that has erectile dysfunction can get SMC-K, I believe. And so they'll actually see a 0% disability rating and then SMC-K, and then that SMC-K will give them, an extra $100 a month for living with erectile dysfunction. And so in this case, you would have to look at which SMC that it is covered under. Now, other SMCs are, for veterans who are at 100%, they get such another large chunk. There's additional SMCs for that. Very commonly, we'll see homebound or aid in attendance, and you can get special monthly compensation for those things as well too. And so, I think it's possible that the most closely related SMC to this, if he doesn't have at 100% a whole nother disability that gets him to 70% or above, he might or they might qualify for aid in attendance if they need help around the home because of their severe disabilities. Now, if they are up and about and taking care of themselves and not needing in-home care, they might not qualify for aid in attendance as well either. That's a really good question, and I think it would depend on the day-to-day life of the veteran, but I don't think the nature of the surgery alone would qualify it for special monthly compensation unless a new disability arose that was so severe that it was also individually rated very high at the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Oh yeah. Moving on to Angel, that was a solid answer. Okay, moving on to Angel Romero. He's diagnosed with pancreatitis. Would I be covered to claim it presumptive under the PACT Act? And I'm assuming you're talking about Gulf War, and you meet those time requirements. Pancreatic cancer is a part of that. So is types of gastro cancers.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that, John?
No, for sure, submit a claim. Yeah. Cancers are, taken very seriously at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and very often veterans, with active cancers can get claims expedited because of that. And so, sometimes we'll see some of those active cancer claims get proceeded a little quicker. In fact, in many scenarios, the VA will rate veterans who do have an active cancer that they're getting treated for. They'll rate them at 100% IU while they're actively getting treated for the cancer. And then after the cancer subsides and after, either all surgeries and recoveries, they can then reduce you, and then you can get rated for residuals from the cancer. And so I would highly recommend you submit a claim as soon as possible. Show all evidence of where you served and show evidence of your current diagnosis, and if possible, provide as much evidence about the nexus as you can, right? And so whatever your actual diagnosis is, you can always reference the presumptive nature based off of where you served as well too, and when you served.
Oh yeah, so Sergeant King has two questions. Where are you located? I'm located just south of DC in Virginia. Del K. Graham Veteran Foundation is in Oklahoma. And then, John, where are you located at?
So I'm in my office in Norman. So we're actually, if any Sooner fans here, we're right down the street from the University of Oklahoma. We have a satellite office that we operate out of Lawton, Oklahoma, not far from Fort Sill. And hopefully by the end of this year, we've got a stronger presence out of Nashville and Dallas-Fort Worth as well too. And so we hope to be able to continue to grow to serve more veterans, but it is highly contingent on us being able to find more grant opportunities, more fundraising opportunities, more donors, so that we can afford more computers and more desk and more office space, so that we can actually sit across from more veterans every year and get them the benefits that they're eligible for, largely by having conversations like Clay and I are having with you all about individual disabilities. The only difference is that we can typically pull up a veteran's claim file inside of the Veterans Benefits Management System, VBMS, and we could actually see everything. So I can see all your service treatment records. I can see every C&P exam you've ever went to. I can see your previous award and denial letters, and we can use that logic. We can use that data in order to support a new claim. And so, but it does largely rely off of us being able to sit across from veterans as many times as possible every year and get them all the benefits they're eligible for.
Oh yeah, and his second question is, what are the requirements for TDIU?
So, and this is debated, right? I've actually gotten heated discussions with volunteers about this because if you look at federal regulation, right, it goes to show that if a veteran has a service-connected disability that prevents them from working, regardless of the rating, right, you could make an argument somewhere at the VA that disability is preventing them from maintaining gainful employment, and they should be able to apply for TDIU, right? Submit my 4192, let's get this thing going. But if you look at scheduler versus extra scheduler is where I'm sure, and I don't have numbers on this, but I'm sure 99.9% of all veterans in the country that are rated for TDIU are based off of the scheduler rating. You have to have 2 or more disabilities at 70% or above, with at least one at 40%, or one disability at 60%. And sometimes I have to look that up. It's been a while since I've submitted we have team members here who do almost exclusively TDIU and IU claims. But I believe that is the case, right? So if you have one disability at 60%, you could be eligible for, or if you have 2 or more disabilities with at least one at 40%, and a total of 70%, then you can apply for TDIU. But again, you're going to need to make the argument that one of your disabilities or the combination of disabilities is what prevents you from maintaining gainful employment. And that's really not a challenging thing to do. Sometimes veterans, the largest challenge is getting a previous employer to sign off on a document to show that this is why. So for instance, you will often need a previous supervisor or a previous employer to state, this veteran was working here. These are the dates that they were working here. I was this veteran's previous supervisor, and I attest to the fact that they had to leave because of their PTSD, or because of their severe back condition, or because their knee condition, they could no longer, do the bare minimum task of this job. And that, plus the application, would make you eligible for TDIU, assuming you meet the scheduler rating of 60, or 2 or more disabilities with one at 40 and a combined of 70.
Bunch of math there off the top, but I will say this.
I'm sorry about
No,
it.
you're good.
I wish it was easier. I really do.
Something I do struggle with is when I meet a veteran one-on-one and they ask about TDIU. And this is a genuine question from me to you. The first thing I think, the first thing I think about is, okay, well, you probably rate an increase, right? Yeah. Probably. If I just had to guess, there's probably an increase, and you're probably not rated as you should be for, let's say, mental health. If you're arguing your mental health keeps you from work and you're at 30%, there's probably an increase in there, okay? And so what I struggle with personally is what's that relationship? How would you handle that? Would you recommend the increase? Would you go the TDIU route? I mean, is it both? What goes through your mind?
If you are a younger veteran, the VA is not supposed to, but they do take that into account, right? Like, I don't know if I have a reference for you on that. I know that to be, a statistical, a statistical piece of data that we see, and so I would highly recommend. And this is not VA advice, right? This is like personal advice as like from me to Clay or me to a veteran, right? The number one investment you can make in your life is in yourself. So do everything that you possibly can as a younger veteran to continue to invest in yourself, right? If it's a mental health condition that's preventing you from working, do absolutely everything that you can to pursue treatment in order to improve your mental health. If it's a physical disability, go to all the rehab, do absolutely everything you can to improve your physical disabilities and invest in yourself, because that will pay the best dividends over the course of your life. Now, that probably goes to support the fact that, yes, I think in many scenarios, you're probably underrated. So if you have all of these disabilities that are preventing you from being able to work, or one disability from preventing you from being able to work, and you're wanting to submit TDIU, I would, as a younger veteran, for sure pursue that after you have exhausted all other disabilities that you currently live with in terms of applying for service connection at the VA. I've definitely seen younger veterans that it is absolutely warranted based off of their disability get approved for TDIU. But of course, then you start capping your ability to actually work. And of course, as under TDIU, you can pursue other passive sources of income, but then that could be slippery too, right? And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation where you're wanting to work, you're capable and wanting to do it, but then and now you're thinking, oh well, I can't because I've got TDIU, and so. Yeah, I would submit for an increase for other disabilities that you're likely living with but are unrated or haven't been shown to be secondary yet.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna go back and rewatch the stream on that one. I'm cutting that whole piece out for myself. Okay, Fred Christie, he has all right, so granted Cop D, I'm assuming from PACT Act. Congrats on that. Can heart condition be secondary to that? I do think a medical doctor would be best suited to answer that. There might be some correlation there. I don't know enough to say causation. John, do you have anything on that? Because correlation and causation are two completely separate things.
Yeah, I hate to speak on that specifically because I haven't submitted one of those claims and I haven't seen that. So that is definitely not to say that it's not possible. Again, the VA can service connect any condition secondary to any other condition, probably in the world. But you would have to show that the medical nexus is there. And sometimes, if it's not a common one that C&P examiners or the VA are used to seeing, the burden largely lies on the veteran to show that to be true. And that unfortunately exists long before there are presumptions. So, look at Agent Orange. The last service members, like the war ended in 1973. The last Americans left in 1975. Congress didn't admit widely that it was a bad idea to pour Agent Orange on people till 1991. You know what I mean? So the burden of proof was on the veteran from 1975 or 1973 to 1991, or whenever they got out of the military after Vietnam to 1991. And even after that, for many new presumptive disabilities that have been added. We saw the same thing through the PACT Act, right? Where veterans burden of proof was on the veteran that, hey, I'm 30 years old and I have this crazy, severe, rare lung cancer. And now the presumptive is there, right? And the burden has been lifted off of the veteran. And so in that case, I think that would be a scenario where you might benefit from a little bit of research, finding a medical provider that can link those via a medical nexus and their personal their personal medical opinion, and then documenting that and submitting that claim to the VA. I just haven't seen it, so I can't for sure say that that's possible or not possible. And because again, I'm not a doctor, I couldn't tell you.
Oh yeah, totally off subject. It just randomly popped in my mind. This thing I got on right here is money. Highly recommend. Okay. All right, Juan Acevedo, the carrier thing, Okay. He says, oh no, he's answering a question. Okay. Back to Jolly Green. This was the person that asked about the MST thing. Another question. He says, I have sleep apnea at 50%. Asthma denied due to pre-existing illness. Okay. Can I appeal saying OIF agitated my asthma? I haven't had asthma attack. Is it worth fighting since it's pyramiding? What are your thoughts on that? Because sleep apnea and asthma are commonly pyramided together. Depends on symptoms, though.
I don't think, sometimes veteran service officers need to be careful what they tell veterans because sometimes you can do harm to a claim profile. The last thing you want to do is submit a claim that won't increase your compensation, but could get you reduced. And again, anytime you submit a claim, a VA C&P exam or a VA examiner or a decision officer is going to go through your record in order to help you substantiate your claim. And if in the process of that they find evidence or find reason to believe that new evidence may be there to lower your disability, they can send you to a new C&P exam for your sleep apnea, and they could theoretically lower you to 30%. I don't think that's possible right now. Sleep apnea is kind of one of those ones that I think a lot of organizations are stepping around delicately because no one really knows when they're going to administer the new sleep apnea criteria, which was brought to public comment last February or March, something like that. And it will eventually get to the point where sleep apnea, a 50% rating for sleep apnea, is like very challenging to get. Whereas now all you have to have is a diagnosis and a prescription of a C&P or a CPAP. And boom, they're at 50%, right? Living with sleep apnea, got a CPAP issued, right? Not even documentation of me wearing it every night, 50%. And so, but that hasn't hit yet, right? So that new verbiage is not in 38 CFR. It's not being administered at the regional offices. And so right now, if I was you, I would probably appeal it and make the argument that your service exasperated. I'm drawing a blank on that word right now. Clay, you're the smart guy here. You know this one.
Exasperated?
Yeah. Worsened your condition.
Yeah, made it worse.
And so what you can do, right? And so you could state, hey, that's a pre-existing condition, but I have the presumption of soundness. And so it was not noted on my intake exam, or if it was noted on your intake exam, it was likely noted that it's not symptomatic right now, and it's not currently bothering me, right? So I'm a healthy individual coming into the military, and I have the presumption of soundness. Now, I served in OEF, OIF, my condition worsened, it's now symptomatic. That is a claim that you theoretically should win with a good C&P exam. And I'd highly recommend supporting your claim with as much independent medical evidence as possible based off of your private treatment records, VA treatment records, or your personal doctor if they're willing to create a nexus for you to show and to document. But I would also highly recommend submitting a 4138 cover letter with your claim. I'm sorry, I should have muted there, to show and to state specifically that it was not symptomatic when you joined. It got worse after you served in the Middle East, and it is continuing to bother you as a chronic condition today.
Oh, yeah.
Again, that's probably a much longer answer than you wanted, but I don't think you will get reduced, so I don't see a significant harm in getting it also service connected, because I will say I think asthma is something that could cause, even possibly over sleep apnea, maybe new conditions in the future, which you might want to be able to get secondary to asthma.
That's a great point. We have another donation from Orange Remediation. Brother, thank you. Another longtime fan of the channel. Orange, thanks for showing up again. I appreciate that. Secret Sauce says, if I'm rated at 0% for substance abuse, can I file for depression? This one I do know, okay, because substance abuse has causation link between various mental health disorders, and it's noted as a self-medication, right? So, for instance, an alcoholic, there's causation of self-medication from being an alcoholic to having PTSD, to having anxiety, depression, all those things. So there is literature out there for that. you can absolutely submit the claim secondary to that. Personally, I would highly recommend getting an independent medical opinion for that. Just like John said earlier, when it comes to common things, the C&P examiners will grant secondary connection, right? So radiculopathy to lower back, probably one of the most common secondaries that C&P examiners will agree with, because you can take an x-ray of it, but you can't take an x-ray of mental health conditions, okay? So that one's a little iffy. Personally, I would submit an independent medical opinion with that. You don't have to. You could absolutely submit the secondary claim, and then if denied, then I would definitely recommend submitting a Nexus letter in a supplemental appeal. But do you have anything to add to that, John?
No, I'd say, at a minimum, you'd probably want to get that diagnosed, right? And so if you do have a diagnosed condition, major depressive disorder or depression, at a minimum, you're going to want to show that you have depression when you're submitting that claim. I think that would be possibly the easiest path for the VA to deny you, would be to say, well, we have no evidence that this condition even exists. And they may not, because again, the VA doesn't have to send you to a C&P exam. They can deny you before you even ever have the opportunity to go to a C&P exam. Because if they don't have evidence that a condition exists, then they don't have necessarily reason to send you to a C&P exam. And we unfortunately see that, right? Where a veteran will submit a claim on their own, and the VA has no reason to believe that claim or that claimed condition exists, and they might not send them to the C&P exam. Now, if you have a diagnosed condition of depression, right, they have to send you to a C&P exam. The question will be, will that C&P examiner, whoever it is, wherever they are, wherever you are, will they state as likely or more likely than not caused by their current substance abuse? And that's one of the reasons that I think a lot of people like to use their own doctors, is because they have a relationship with their doctor, and their doctor, independent from what they see on file, knows them and knows that their condition is caused by that other condition, right? Because they've been able to, learn that through their expertise over time with you. Something to think about.
Oh yeah. So another donation. Guys, thank you. We're later in the stream, so I'll go ahead and say this again. All donations go straight to Del K. Graham Veteran Foundation, an accredited VSO by the VA. And I looked at the dollar amount, and it was weird at first, and it's $17.75, but that's the year the Marine Corps was made, so it's a Marine thing. Y'all really wouldn't get it. I won't get too motivated on you. But thanks, USMC, Big B. And, yeah. Something like that. Okay. Whatever. Joey Paget has 2 questions. He says, how does he get a copy of his award letter through a VSO? Is that the quickest way? I'm assuming you mean your benefits letter, and I would honestly say go download the VA app, and you can download all kinds of letters straight from there, unless you're talking,
There are scenarios where it will hit in VBMS, and your veteran service officer may beat you by a few days sometimes, and sometimes could be by weeks, depending on the mail system where you live and where the regional or where, like, and how close you live to the mail processing center. Depending on your veteran service organization, you could always reach out and have them look, but many of them represent thousands and thousands of veterans. So when a veteran says, hey, can you just go look in my file and see if it's there? They probably won't. They're probably going to be working with another veteran who actually is waiting to submit their claim. So I would probably take Clay's advice of getting on va.gov and looking for it there, or waiting for it in the mail.
Oh, yeah. So
I know it can be, it's like so nerve-wracking sometimes waiting for these claims to be decided. And so I absolutely understand. And if you do have access to your veteran service organization, you can go into them and of course, if they're not doing anything, I'm sure they would be more than happy to pull up VBMS and look inside your claim file and see if it's in there.
Oh yeah. So John, I actually need your honest opinion. It's about to be an hour and a half. I want you to be honest here. Totally your call. We have 96 watching now. We've had about 85 the entire hour and a half, which is really good numbers. And so your call, do you want to keep pushing, or what does your evening look like for you? Okay, if so.
I got nothing else to do other than I'm headed back to the hotel probably sometime before midnight. So I can stay on for at least another, 3.5 hours.
Okay, let's say 9:30, and then we'll make a call at 9:30. Okay, 3.5 hours. Okay.
I'm headed from here to the dinner to the hotel, so I got all the time in the world for you all.
Okay, so thank you, by the way. I haven't said thank you to John for coming to the stream. John, thank you very much. I'm sure you're just as busy, if not more busy.
Thank you all, and I will say, I'm not even close to the most knowledgeable person here at the foundation. I tend to lead our organization in a lot of different aspects, which tends to make it so that I actually don't get to work with veterans on VA claims every day. And so almost everyone here that's accredited and works every day as a volunteer, as a claim writer, or as an appointment taker, most of them are far more knowledgeable about individual disabilities. I tend to think a lot about the overall process and administration of our accreditation across 5,000 veterans. And so, I definitely encourage you to reach out. And if you're interested in working with us, you can fill out our intake form from the comfort of your couch. You can do our appointments from the comfort of your couch. You never have to leave your couch to work with us. The only thing that comes with us is, of course, we do have hundreds of volunteers and team members, but there's only so many of them, and when we try and work with thousands of veterans a year, so sometimes our appointments are a little farther away than we would like them to be. So, for instance, if you fill out our intake form today, you might get your first appointment within 90 to like 110 days, something like that, and we know that's a long time. That's why we always submit intent to files right at the beginning, so that right when you onboard, you sign an intent to file. We submit that to the Department of Veterans Affairs. We get your clock going. We meet with you as soon as we can, help you collect evidence as fast as possible, and then bring you back in for another appointment to write your VA claim and submit it off to the VA. And if we're successful, which we very often are, you will get backdated to the date you did that intake form. And so that's just our process in a nutshell. Highly encourage you to use us if you would like to, but we fall in that category of a VSO that sometimes can be challenging to get a hold of, because we're working with new veterans. And so if you call us and say, hey, can you pull up my claim file and see if my decision letter's in there, we might not be there to answer that phone. To be able to pop in there and check your claim file, because it can be challenging. If you look nationwide, that tends to be one of the struggles for veteran service organizations around the country, is that there's typically more veterans that want help from them than there are hours in the day for them to be able to help everyone. So that's why I'm more than happy to sit here on the live with you guys and help as much as I can, in order to give you all the knowledge that you would need in order to be able to do this yourself. And if you do absolutely also still want to work with us, we encourage you, but we also encourage you to use anyone in your community, right? Use an accredited attorney, agent, veteran service organization to get that expert help that you deserve, and that the Department of Veterans Affairs has allocated for you in order to get that help. So again, I'll stay on all night, but yeah, thank you all for your service, and thank you for living as best you can with the disabilities from your service. And again, it's our mission to be able to try and service connect every single one of them to the VA if we can.
This is the perfect time to actually talk about Del K. Graham's Veteran Foundation YouTube. And so, guys, if you like John Fody on the stream, what we're actually going to do is bring accredited the experience, the expertise John just talked about. We want to bring accredited VSOs to the Del K. Graham channel and have live streams there, because they are accredited through Del K. Graham, and then they can go ahead and speak on that. And so stay tuned for that. We don't have a timeline on that yet, but it's going to happen. And then there's also going to be videos uploaded to Del K. Graham's YouTube as well. And which leads to this question that someone just typed: how do I become a VSO? John, that's all you. That's up your alley.
Yeah, a few different ways. I'd definitely recommend going to 38 CFR, which is federal law, 38 Code of Federal Regulation 14.628 and 14.629. And that outlines the VA's accreditation program. So there can only be 3 types of accredited people in the entire world. Everyone else is just a guy or gal who's trying to help. And sometimes a guy or a gal starts an LLC and they charge people for that help. Um, but there are only three types, right? You can be an accredited agent, attorney, or representative. We only have representatives. Veteran service organizations only have representatives. Now, sometimes they may have an agent or attorney that they work in conjunction with, but isn't necessarily accredited under their organization. And so if you go to the Office of General Counsel's website, you can just type in Office of General Counsel, VA. It'll let you search for accredited individuals near you. And you could either search for an agent, attorney, or a representative. Representatives by law have to work for free, and they can't charge you for anything, even if it's an appeal, where agents and attorneys can charge you for appeals. So by law, no one can charge you for an initial claim. So no one can charge you to submit a normal VA claim. No one can charge you to submit an increase. But if it's technically an appeal, right? So if it's an 0995 supplemental claim, higher level review 0996, or a board appeal 10182, sometimes referred to as a 10182, then agents and attorneys can charge you for those three things. That's why agents and attorneys tend to not help veterans with initial claims. That's why some of them have very robust intake processes, because they're trying to determine whether or not they even want to help you, let alone can you win your claim. Very often they might know that you can win your claim, but it's not an appeal, so they'll tell you to go work with a veteran service organization. And so you can become an accredited entity by deciding, do I want to go to law school and become an attorney and then go through the VA's testing process to be individually accredited as an attorney under 38 CFR 14.628 and 38 CFR 14.629, or do I want to become an accredited agent? Agents are not too different than attorneys, other than they're not on a state bar. And so agents can charge up to 20% a reasonable fee for appeals. And there are many agents nationwide that make a full-time living just representing veterans on appeals. They make probably pretty good living doing just that. Representatives are accredited by a veteran service organization. So American Legion, VFW, DAV, Wounded Warrior Project, Paralyzed Veterans of America, the American Legion, Red Cross, any one of these, Vietnam Veterans of America. All of them have veteran service representatives that they employ or they volunteer as a member, and they work for free. So the fastest way would be to become a member of a veteran service organization and show them that you are interested in the claims process. Start either volunteering or applying to be an employee, and they will teach you the claims process. They will onboard you into their training. They will individually accredit you, and then you will officially be accredited, and you'll operate either as a volunteer or as a staff member for that organization. If you look nationwide, the majority of veteran service officers work for state or county offices. And so that's kind of the only caveat to what I mentioned before. Veteran service organizations employ veteran service representatives, but the only other entity that can employ veteran service representatives are state or county or tribal municipalities or governments. And so you can also work for your state. So for instance, here in Oklahoma, there's the Oklahoma Department of Veterans Affairs. They employ like 40 or 50 accredited representatives that work statewide. It might be a little more than that now. I haven't looked at their budget or numbers recently, but in many states, they have a smaller state department, but they'll have larger county departments. So for instance, in Tennessee, they have the Tennessee Department of Veteran Services. And that organization, that state entity, is accredited, and they employ 12 people statewide. And in Tennessee, they rely largely on the county service officers. So there's 90 counties-ish, and then there's 90 county service officers that are trained by the State Department and accredited through the VA as a county veteran service officer under 38 CFR 14.629, I believe. Again, that was way longer of a question. That was way longer of an answer than you probably wanted, but that's the most specific and accurate answer I think I can give you.
No, that was solid. So Josh, he had asked this question last week, so I definitely want to give you the best answer I can. And so his situation, John, was he had a primary care that I guess doesn't work there anymore. Something happened and his primary care went away. Okay, and I advised him to call patient advocacy, but he comes back this week, so 7 days later, has no response from patient advocacy and doesn't have a primary care team at the VA. I'm assuming there's a medical need there. What advice would you give him?
So I actually work with and get briefed a lot by the Veterans Health Administration here in Oklahoma. I hope to get better integrated in a few other states as well too. All of the directors, every director I've ever met for the Veterans Health Administration is always advocating for their team to better support the veterans that are within their care. And most of them are overworked and underpaid. And so one of the things that I actually really dislike and have been working to help improve locally and nationally, when a veteran enrolls in VA healthcare at a local hospital, it's localized to that area. So for instance, Oklahoma City has the Oklahoma City VA healthcare system, and it's independent from the healthcare system that's up in Tulsa. It's run by a separate director. They have separate systems, separate processes in some instances, and they're completely separate hospitals. They don't communicate all that much. They can, but don't a lot. And that director who's in charge of that hospital system and all of its subordinate clinics are responsible for running all of the subordinate offices, to include patient advocacy. And every patient advocacy office that I have ever been to or worked with normally has far more veterans that are trying to help than staff members onboarded to help them. And a lot of times that's because there's a delay. From a moment a veteran enrolls in VA healthcare, there's sometimes upwards of a 2-year delay from when that director gets additional funding to support that veteran. So it often means that organizations and hospital systems that are growing the fastest VA-wise are the ones that are funded the least as per capita. And so again, that's a long way of telling you that patient advocacy is probably a great office where you are locally. They're probably just very busy. I try to advocate for bureaucrats as much as I can because I've been a bureaucrat and I know what it's like. But that's not to say that they shouldn't have gotten back to you, because they should have. I would recommend reaching out to, if you feel like you've exhausted everything within the hospital, at the social work office and the patient advocacy office. I would encourage you to reach out to your local Congress member. You can literally go to Google and type in "find my representative," and it'll take you to like a U.S. government website where you can put in your address and it'll tell you who your U.S. representative is. I would call up that office and say, "Hey, I'm a veteran in your district and I'm having a really hard time getting the care that I am legally entitled to at the Department of Veterans Affairs Hospital right down from your office." And I assure you, someone will likely call you very soon. Or you might talk to a person live on the phone who will put you in touch with their military and veterans affairs caseworker. That person has a relationship directly with the executive suite of that hospital, and they will be able to get you a call back faster than you could ever dream.
Oh yeah.
Did that answer your question?
No, that was solid.
Yeah.
Everyone in the chat's talking about my baby right now. Yeah, guys, just so you guys know, I wasn't supposed to have her tonight, but something happened, and here I am. Here we are, and so here she is. This is her. Welcome to the chat. Okay, so Teet Anj, I probably butchered your name. All right. Okay, so he's replying to someone else. Reply. I'm looking for another question. Everyone, so I will say this in the chat. One thing I have been seeing is veterans replying to other veterans with correct information. That's solid, okay? Always a fan of veterans helping veterans, especially if you are giving out correct information. So everyone answering in the chat, thank you very much for that. Okay, swinging down. Angela B says this is a great nonprofit to help veterans. Thanks for the info. Yep, Del K. Graham. I will say this from my perspective, John. When it comes to VSOs, the way that Del K. Graham handles a claim, they are evidence-based claims, right? So a VSO at Del K. Graham won't kind of throw mud on a wall to see what sticks. Those claims are going to be evidence-based claims, and that's the only way to submit a claim, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
when you look, like when you're shopping for a VSO, you should shop much like anything in the market, right? Shop around a bit. Which veteran service organization has a culture that most reflects your values, right? Your beliefs, your thoughts on the VA claims process. And I would recommend you go with that organization, right? Many people choose Wounded Warrior Project. Many veterans feel comfortable with American Legion. Many want to go down to a VFW hall, right? Choose the veteran service organization and veteran service officer that has a culture similar to how you would want to run a claims program if you were going to run it, right? And I say that because there are some veteran service organizations, and maybe not the organization as a whole, but maybe that individual officer, they will gatekeep benefits for you. So, for instance, if you say, "Hey, I'm a 70% disabled veteran, can you help me get to 100%?" They're like, "No, I can't help you do that." And you're like, "Wait, why not?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I mean, I could submit a disability claim for you if you have a disability, but I'm not going to help you find new disabilities to get to 100%." And that's really not the logic they should be bringing to the conversation. But we've probably all heard of, and I know I have heard of and met, veteran service organizations that carry that culture with them, that kind of acts as like the gatekeeper for benefits. And so that might not be the right culture for you in the veteran service organization. So look for an organization and an officer that is willing to fight for you to get all the benefits you're eligible for, and will have conversations with you about secondary conditions and pursuing disabilities that you do have, but you didn't know could be service connected. We work with veterans every day in this facility that are living. That's how I know I've been talking too much. My voice is getting hoarse on me. They're living with chronic depression from a slate of physical disabilities that prevent them from living their life almost at all. And we have a conversation with them sometimes about, applying for.
Get it all out. You're good. You're good.
Applying for depression, secondary to their many physical disabilities, right? We're talking veterans that have bilateral knee conditions, shoulder conditions, a cervical condition, a 40% disability for their back. And we start talking to them about mental health, and they're like, "You know what? I have been struggling for a while. You know what I mean? I have not been living my life. I have been secluding myself from my family. I'm just in pain so much that, I don't know if I can continue to live like this." And we have veterans that have that conversation with us all the time. So we'll take a veteran from 70% to 100% very easily by having a real new and honest conversation with them about mental health that some veteran service organizations based off of culture, or veteran service officers based off of culture, aren't ready to have with other veterans. And think about that when you go to find in the community, or think about that if you're an accredited veteran service officer, or if you want to become an accredited veteran service officer. Have a culture that is open and inclusive to all veterans, regardless of why they're sitting across from you initially. Get into the meat and potatoes of what the conversation could be, not just what they're bringing to the table.
Oh yeah, the culture aspect really drives it home.
Yeah.
Randy Marsh, he has a picture from South Park, which is hilarious. But he says, "How successful are Nexus letters?" This is definitely a long answer, but Nexus letters go. There's a few aspects to Nexus letters, like who is writing it. Okay, a psychologist versus a psychiatrist. That would be a good example. One's a medical doctor, one's not. Can a psychologist write a Nexus? Absolutely. Can it help you win your claim? Absolutely. Okay? But the who plays into that, your evidence. And this is one thing I always tell veterans, because are there companies out there that will charge a Nexus although they don't really believe in their own opinion? I'm going to say yeah. Okay? I'll make that stretch and say yes. And I will say this. There is no successful Nexus without medical evidence. You have to have the medical evidence. You have to give the independent medical opinion evidence to make that opinion. So evidence is a part of that. The Nexus statement obviously is a part of that. And then medical literature is a part of that. John, do you have anything to add to that?
So we obviously talk about this weekly. And I've talked about this for probably every other day for 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The vast majority of veterans in this country, and there's 17 million veterans, Not all of them use the VA. In fact, far too few use VA or receive VA benefits. The vast majority of them that have a disability rating gained that disability rating from a disability benefits questionnaire, a DBQ. So is a Nexus statement powerful? Yes. Is a DBQ more powerful? Absolutely. And so if you are going to pay somebody $1,500 to review your medical records and give you a fair and honest medical opinion based off of the literature, based off of your symptoms, based off of your medical exam and records from remote, go for it, right? And if you feel comfortable with it, it very well could be very successful. And it of course depends on your symptoms, your disability, and your evidence. The VA is still going to send you to a C&P examiner. And it is possible that that decision review officer that looks at both of those pieces of evidence, a medical nexus statement from a $1,500 one you paid from some nurse practitioner across the country or MD across the country, they're going to see that C&P exam that was done down the street from your house, and they're going to say the C&P examiner provided a more convincing rationale based off of their in-person examination and thorough review of your VA claims file. Thus, you are denied, right? And it doesn't say thus you are denied, but we see it all the time where a medical statement can be beat by a comprehensive exam from a C&P examiner with a less likely than not service-connected statement. And so I would highly recommend you work with your medical provider, your doctor, in order to get the Nexus statement done on a disability benefits questionnaire or at an in-person evaluation and examination that documents your symptoms, documents their medical nexus, and documents your in-service event, along with your claims file and your service treatment records. If you can do that, you can go a lot farther than someone who is compiling a 16-page Nexus statement that the decision review officer might not even read. And that's kind of my thoughts on it. And again, it's not that 16-page Nexus letter doesn't include all the information that the VA would need in order to service connect it. I'm just saying they're used to seeing DBQs all day. They send out veterans to C&P exams all day on DBQs. It's a very powerful thing to use a DBQ from a medical provider that you know and trust, so that it goes directly against apples to apples versus the C&P exam that the VA is going to get on file for you from the regional office's contracted C&P examiner.
Oh yeah, no, solid. And what you'll see a lot of times is a DBQ. It's kind of one package, right? You get the Nexus and the DBQ. And that's kind of how a medical doctor will sell that package. But if there was a ranking system on who you should get Nexus letters from, I totally agree. It should be your doctor, especially a DBQ. Okay, if your private regular doctor fills one out for free, 100% go for it every time. Okay, but it just depends. I've heard of doctors not doing that. I've heard of VA healthcare doctors not doing that. So that definitely depends on that.
I'd caveat that a little bit, right? Like, free might not be bad. Free might cost you a lot more than a $300 evaluation. You know what I mean? Like, there are. Let's go over. We'll hit this real quick. And anyone in the chat listening, this might be the most important thing that I've said yet. So pay attention. If you are going to get a C&P exam done, if you are going to get a Nexus statement, there's a few things that need to be on there, right? It needs to identify you, right? It needs to document that they reviewed your military history, like your medical records and your claims file, right? They need to review comprehensively your records to include service treatment records and your VA claims file. They have to document your diagnosis. They need to document your symptoms. They need to identify who they are with their credentials. They need to sign it. And of course, most importantly, as we have talked about here, the seventh thing would be they need to provide their medical nexus. And their medical nexus needs to be comprehensive in a way that your personal doctor might not know needs to be so specific. It needs to state, right? I, so-and-so, have reviewed this veteran today, and I have documented the symptoms of their post-traumatic stress here. I believe it is more likely than not connected to their in-service event of this thing, right? This in-service event. And it's more likely than not connected to in-service event, and signed, credentials, dated, boom, and you're good to go. And so whatever format that is, that the medical provider needs to provide that, right? And maybe their medical opinion is as likely as not. Maybe their medical opinion is less likely than not. I would highly urge you, if your medical examiner says less likely than not, do not submit that evidence. That's not going to help you. I'd pursue a different claim, or I'd find a different medical examiner who gives you a different rationale. It's possible maybe that disability is not going to be service connected based off of the symptoms and based off of the in-service event. But if you can get your medical provider to do those 7 things, I don't care if it's on a bar napkin, it's going to be very, very powerful up against a VA C&P examiner's DBQ. But all of those things I just mentioned are outlined on a DBQ, and the decision review officer is used to looking at and reviewing DBQs. One of the things of a fully developed claim is it's really intended to reduce the VA's backlog and make the VA decision process easier for the VA. Help them out a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, help them out a little bit, play the game, lean into the bureaucracy, right? Learn that form, get on the right DBQ, and submit it that way. That's why we really encourage veterans to use DBQs here at the foundation with their private medical examiner or with independent medical examiner, because we see every day how powerful it is. And we have a very high success rate for the VA claims that we submit when we do use independent medical evidence on C&P exam DBQs, right? And so hopefully that helps. Play left.
No, I'm here. I'm back. I'm back.
Play's back.
Okay, had to get another bottle. All right, I came prepared, kind of. Okay, so this is a question I do not know. I'm pretty sure they're the same, but LG asked if MedBoard, so an IDES claims process, just going through the MedBoard and submitting VA claims, is it the same for active duty and National Guard? I assume yes. I'm not 100% on that. John, do you know the answer to that?
So first off, I'd like to say, someone said, "Is he barfing?" Oh. No, I'm not barfing. I have a daughter. She started daycare like a month ago, and right after she started daycare, she brought home the most vile, disgusting petri dish of illnesses and sicknesses. And so for 3 weeks I was sick, and I'm still dealing with the residual cough of that. And so, Clay, I'm sure whenever your newest child starts daycare, you'll be as sick as I am for the first month. So back to the question, which was I think the question was about med boards, and are they different, active and guard, correct?
Yep, that's right. That's the question.
Yeah. And so I know in the past, Clay has often talked about the PEBLO and the ability to gain representation through the MedBoard process through unit or chain of command. But chain of command, I think, the resources that are available on base. Hi, little buddy. And so I would probably defer you to that, because I have been through the MedBoard process through the Army. And I went through the IDES process under active duty, but I actually have not had conversations with someone who's gone through on the guard line. So I don't think she liked the model. Change the battery pack. Clay's having a few things go on over there. Clay, if you want, I can help you with some of the questions. You gotta do your thing, brother. You gotta dad it up there. No.
Okay, I'm back. Did my camera die? Yes, it did, because we've been streaming for a while. Okay, moving down to the next question.
Yeah, if you want to, I feel bad you're having to less questions. I can pick up the questions. I'm trying to find where.
I'll hand this one off to you. VA benefits question: without your DD 214, can you get full VA benefits, including BAH, when you're on your GI Bill?
Yes and no. So the DD-214, or some of the equivalent styles, is a discharge document that the VA uses in order to establish you as a veteran. Um, of course, we work with many veterans who don't have a DD-214. A lot of veterans' DD-214s got burned up in the fire at the National Personnel Records Center many years ago, and so they are able to request their DD-214 in the documentation listing them as a veteran to be recreated, and the Department of Veterans Affairs is very familiar with that process. Do not have a DD-214, it was destroyed. I would bet most veterans in America today who served post 9/11, 04 era at all, um, you have a digital DD-214 somewhere in either the VA system or capable of being digitized from the National Archives. So if you go to National Archives and Records Administration, NARA.gov, you can request your DD-214 online pretty easily right from that website. And I would bet it's there. You can also reach out to the Department of Veterans Affairs through the VBA's call line, 1-800-827-1000. And they can actually look in your claim file to help you determine whether or not it's in there. I don't think you can request it to be sent from there, but that would help you in working with a veteran service organization to know whether or not it's there. VSOs also have access to Veterans Benefits Management System. So if you've ever used a VA benefit in the past, it's possible that the VA already has your DD-214 on file, in which you could get representation by a veteran service organization by filling out VA Form 21-22. And a few days later, after that's submitted, your veteran service organization could go in your VA claims file and see if your DD-214 is there. But if you were in the National Guard or Reserves, you may be able to reach out to your local unit, like your local, like for instance, here would be like the Oklahoma National Guard, and they're going to have a records processing center that might also have localized DD-214 or DD-214s at that facility. So depending on your service, again, depending on your branch, would determine where it's at, and most likely have one out there. But if you do truly know yours has been destroyed and it's not anywhere within the federal system, you can work with the VA and the branch of original service possibly to have that recreated. The VA does that quite a bit. So.
Oh yeah, I am a man of many talents, juggling all of this all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, Joey Paget has a benefits question. So he's going to see a VSO to upgrade. One, that's a good idea to see a VSO. I'm always a fan of that. He has PTSD service connected at 30%. His question is, what do I need to present them? I haven't worked in 5 years. I assume you're talking about an increase. So John, if someone comes to you wanting an increase, let's say perfect scenario, what do you want them to show you as evidence?
So that's kind of the thing, is that you don't need to show me. You're going to need almost certainly to show an examiner. Now, the caveat to that is if you're presenting all of the evidence so comprehensively that you don't need an examiner to be able to redocument those symptoms. So we could walk through a couple of options here, right? So let's say you're at 30%. And you work with a private psychiatrist, they fill out a DBQ for you, and on there they document those 7 things we talked about earlier, right? They document diagnosis, they document all of your symptoms, and based off of the disability benefits questionnaire, it's apparent to the decision review officer that your symptoms have increased, right? And you stated on your cover letter, hey, my condition has gotten much worse since my last exam. Please see the attached evidence that documents my symptoms that warrant me to move from 30% to 50%, right? You don't have to say that last part, but you could know that to be objectively true. Now, if you didn't have like a private DBQ, what you could show is like clinic or treatment records, right? You could, let's say you're using the Veterans Center, which is a partnered organization under the Department of Veterans Affairs Health Administration. You could be working with a counselor there that over the past 6 months has been documenting all of your symptoms. and you could take a snapshot of a few of these records over time that show specifically the symptoms that you're working with, such as severe inability to work, um, complete withdrawal from friends and family, or nearly complete withdrawal from social and occupational environments, extreme anxiety, constant fear, suicidal ideation. And if you list all of these things, you could see that the symptom blocks on you or the decision review officer are starting to be checked, and they're starting to think, hey, yeah, I can see based on this veteran's treatment record that now we're above a 30% rating. Now we're getting into 50% rating, or now we're getting really close to that 70% rating. And there's a little gray area between the two of those things. But what I would ask you to do is go to the VA's website, pull up the VA public-facing DBQ for post-traumatic stress or mental health, for instance, and go to the very bottom. The very bottom, right before the medical examiner signs and gives uh, marks, there's going to be a bunch of check, like 15 different things that they can check. The more things in there that you check, the higher the rating is. Things are the things that would be mentioned in very thorough counseling records or psychiatry records or psychology, and it would document your social environments, occupational environments, and so the more occupational and social, higher disability rating is going to likely be for mental health. Until you get to the complete occupational environments and relationships, that is to 100%. Is rated 100% for mental health. Shows absolute inability to maintain effective relationships socially or occupationally, and suicide. Is almost every single one of those things on that is going to be checked off, and that would be a veteran that's likely 100% for mental health, and we do see that, and those are veterans that have very severe mental health conditions that prevent them from working, prevent them from maintaining family relationships, and so definitely look and reflect on your own symptoms, and before you go to a VA C&P examiner for mental health, look at the C&P examiner yourself so that you know what type of questions will be asked of you, and you'll know the decision review officer is ultimately what they are ultimately going to see and evaluate in order to determine whether or not you should be jumping from 50 to 30%.
No, that's a solid answer, and it plays into the next question too. So Jimmy Williams is at 70% for insomnia, right, which is under the mental health umbrella, because they share the same symptoms as depression, anxiety, being irritable. If you're not sleeping, you're probably irritable. Okay. His question is, am I able to? Oh, okay. So he's been diagnosed with PTSD. Is he able to claim PTSD with his 70% insomnia? And it goes back to what you had said, John, because you're already at 70%. Can you claim it? Technically, yes, you can. In doing so, is that going to increase your 70 to 100? It depends on your symptoms. And John, do you want to take that from there?
I'd suggest probably not. I don't see that being, and again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not your doctor. I don't see that being a really strong claim. And again, they're both rated under that same, that same section of CFR, on the same DBQ. I wouldn't. No, I would look at what other disabilities, what other things that am I living with that are caused by my insomnia? Am I waking up every day with headaches? Am I taking a bunch of other medications that's causing stomach issues? There's a lot of other disabilities that could be caused from lack of sleep, or lack of good sleep, that could be causing you other disabilities. And I think you would have to truly reflect on any given one day, right? Like what are things that maybe I'm just accustomed to living with that actually could be secondary conditions to insomnia, and starting from there. I also do encourage veterans sometimes to look it up, right? There's lists online that you can find that are, common secondary conditions to insomnia. And you're not going on that list shopping. You're going on that list for like opportunities to be queued in, like, oh yeah, that's right. I do have that. You know what I mean? And it could be with a lot of things, you know what I mean? A lot of disabilities have common secondary conditions, and the impact of that over time, it can result in veterans just living with disabilities without realizing they could be compensated for them, not realizing that they are truly and indeed secondary to other conditions. So the reason I say headaches is that's probably the most common one that I see that could be up to a 50% rating if you are truly having pretty severe headaches that completely prevent you from being able to get out of bed some days. But let's say you're just having really bad headaches and you're living with them, but you are able to get up even though you have to lay down sometimes. Could get 30% for that. So I would look at common secondary conditions to insomnia, and I wouldn't pursue another mental health condition unless you felt like your mental health condition would be rated higher than 70% ultimately. So, and I have seen that, right? A veteran rated at 70% for a mental condition. Turns out, they were like Pearl Heart superhero, incredible person, did some great things in service, experienced some pretty traumatic things, and then later went to go get service connected for PTSD and got that rated at 100%. In which case, they're not compensated for their old mental health condition. Now they're compensated 100% for PTSD and I think for this veteran, it was the instance that got him the Purple Heart. And so, yeah, that's a long way to answer that as well too, but hope that helps a little bit.
No, that does, and I'll add to that to the flip side. Let's say your insomnia was 30%, then you might want to claim PTSD because that would put you in the 50 or 70% bracket. Something else to look at is a very common secondary to PTSD is IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, especially if you have like OIF, OEF, all of that. I'm pretty sure that's presumptive now under the PACT Act. But that would be another reason if you could claim that secondary to that. All right, scrolling down. Yes, everyone's talking about the baby girl. She looks pretty, but she is very loud. Okay. Luckily, she hasn't been screaming too much on the mic. At least I don't think so. I'll have to go back and watch the stream. But we have 20 minutes, John. Let's go ahead and call it at 9:30. Let's try and answer as many questions as we can going down. So Michael McGinn says relocated and no longer have VSO. Okay, so you moved away. Should I get a VSO in new location or attempts to do this on my own? I'll say, Michael, completely up to you. Either way is fine. Okay. If you're working in appeals and you don't feel confident looking at new evidence and submitting a supplemental claim, then I would suggest a VSO. But if you feel confident, there's many resources on YouTube, not just TheCivDiv, but there's many resources on YouTube, many resources online. I'm a big fan of the Reddit Veterans Benefits. You can definitely tap into any of those resources and do it yourself. But either way is fine, okay? As long as you have a very knowledgeable, evidence-based claim, that's all I'm really going to push for. John, do you want to add to that?
I'd say there's also, like our organization, we work with veterans around the country, regardless of where they live. And we help them build evidence based off of, their disability and their situation. And there are other organizations that I'm pretty sure can work with you nationally. Wounded Warrior Project, I'm pretty sure, has like a web-based portal where they can interact with veterans and bring you into their process. And I don't believe it's overly geographic. And so I think there are organizations that are willing to work with you completely remote and without you having to drive or anything.
Oh yeah.
So hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, Paul S says, why is it hard? So when it comes to SSDI, completely out of my lane. I would refer you to someone who's an expert. But his question is, why is it so hard for a veteran with 100% P&T to get Social Security disability? I've paid in a lot of SSI. I probably won't be able to tap into it. John, does Del K. Graham handle SSDI, or is there a...
I don't have a lot of experience with SSDI, and so I would encourage you to maybe try and find an organization, preferably a nonprofit or state-run organization that can help you apply for Social Security disability. I don't have a lot of experience with it. It's actually a pretty big blind side of mine. I'd love to learn more about it and know the integrations so that we can make better recommendations. In the past, our foundation has brought in a member from the Social Security office here in Oklahoma City. And for veterans that had questions, we would point them directly to the Social Security Administration, who would be on site. And so I highly recommend you reach out to them if you haven't. Now, it sounds like maybe you've applied and were denied. And so I know that there are ways to pursue um, and to find individuals who can help with like the legal action of that. And I'm not for sure if they charge or if there's organizations that do that for free. And I really, I don't know. I can't help you with SSDI. Personally.
Yeah, I will say this: just like there's free resources like on YouTube and over the Googles for VA disability, that same thing exists, and probably a lot more for SSDI. So I'm sure you can find research on that. But I think if we gave you advice, it would be ill-advised, and I would definitely go to an expert on that personally. All right, Jim Jones, definitely okay. Is contracting herpes for the first time in service while you're a virgin of sexual trauma? Um, John, do you want to add to that? I want to say yes. I think it's more so the event, or I want to say the impacts on your life that's going to have. It could be. Again, definitely out of my lane.
I hate to speak on that one too because I've not seen one like that. And so, of course, there's definitely members here that have probably seen far more actual MST claims or sexually transmitted disease claims as well too, because veterans, of course, can be rated for sexually transmitted diseases independently, and so because that's a disease that you can live with that you can show was stemmed from your time in service. So much like anything else, it's a disability that the VA can compensate you for. Um, I'm not for sure. I think that, of course, is like everything else. That's going to come down to the medical opinion that you obtain. And so whether it's the VA C&P exam or whether it's a private healthcare exam or independent medical exam, it's going to largely come down to their opinion on your symptoms and your situation. That one's tough. I feel like I would only know after about a 20-minute conversation with you. And so if you would like to work with our foundation, I know we have volunteers that would love to have that conversation with you and help you get all the benefits that you're eligible for. You could work through our process and we could definitely have that conversation with you and also help you collect evidence if it's something that you needed. But you could also maybe have that conversation with the VA hospital if you're getting treatment there with your primary care physician, and maybe see if they believe some nexus is there just based off of what you tell them, and then pursue some documentation that records that nexus later on, even if it's not with them, because most VA doctors won't provide you with any sort of like nexus statement or they won't fill out a DBQ for you. So hope that helps a little bit. I for sure know that if you go through our intake process and fill out our intake form, we can look in your VA claim file and we can likely help you have that conversation and help you decide whether or not that is something that you should submit for based off of the evidence.
Oh yeah. Mike asks, can I use a 10-2-10 for a buddy letter? Absolutely, that's what it is. It's a lay statement, but also known as buddy letter. And then you'll see the 41 to 38, I believe, is a personal statement. That's what you would use to basically self-report or write a statement in support of your claim.
Yeah, and we highly encourage 4138s with every claim. So if you are in chat and you're going to submit a VA claim, even if it's so simple, you think it's the simplest claim in the world, submit it with a 4138 and just say, VA, please service connect my back condition. I have service treatment records that show I fell off of this truck in Iraq in 2004, or I was treated for a back condition in basic training in weeks 2, 4, and 6, as seen here in my medical records. Um, and please see my current diagnosis, diagnosed by Dr. Moore. And thank you for your time. Have a good day. And submit that with your claim. I guarantee you it will lead to more success. Any claim that you submit, if you can create that statement for the examiner or for the decision review officer, it will go a long way to help them get oriented to your claim and know what you're asking them to do. Because if you think about what they do, they sit in an office, whether it's at home or at the VA, and over and over and over again, they open VA claim files. They try and get oriented to a veteran's service, even if it is hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents, and they try and make it an intelligent decision based off of the evidence. And they have quotas. They try and sometimes they'll tell you they don't have quotas. I promise you they have quotas. Every pay period, whether it's every month, every day, they have a number of claims they've got to get through or someone is going to be on them about it. And so make it a little easier for them, right? Submit a 4138 with your claim and say, hey, VA, please do this because of this and this. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Always recommend a personal statement with your claim. And I'll say something like for migraines, describing your symptoms. I would also add that if you have the medical evidence for that. Okay. Kind of the rule of thumb I always tell veterans for lay statements and personal statements is all they do is support the evidence that's already there. It's not going to be in lieu of. Okay. So you can't write a personal statement and say, hey, I never went to medical, but here's my medical evidence, and that's like a self-report, and the VA is not going. I mean, we're not medical doctors, right? And so don't look at personal statements from that lens. Just let them know, hey, here's what I want. Here's why.
Yep.
Okay, Sergeant King. Scrolling down here, we have 13 minutes. How do you service connect sleep apnea? Definitely an open-ended, broad question. You're going to need the 3 things that John talked about, right? In-service event, Nexus, and the current diagnosis.
Yeah. And those can be challenging to obtain.
Yeah.
Sleep apnea is one of those ones where the VA can just be so picky sometimes when it comes to service connecting that, because a lot of people get diagnosed with sleep apnea later in life, and then trying to show that that's connected to your time in service can be challenging, because the VA is going to say, well, you weren't treated for sleep apnea in service, you didn't get diagnosed with sleep apnea in service, and so you'll have to do anything that you can to show those 3 things, right? An in-service event, which an event that either shows that you might have had sleep apnea then, or you were diagnosed with sleep apnea then. You need a current diagnosis, and then you still need a medical provider to create that nexus for you. And so you will need those 3 things. If you don't have the in-service event, which I'm guessing you probably don't, because a lot of veterans don't, because they just try and rush out of the military as fast as they can, and they're just grateful to hang up that uniform for the last time. I would recommend possibly getting buddy statements from your spouse, from your friends. They could document issues that you had sleeping while in service. You're going to need a current diagnosis based off of a sleep study. So you're going to have to go get a sleep study somewhere, whether at the VA or whether you pay for it independently. And then you're going to have to get a medical opinion on that sleep study. And you're going to have to get a medical evaluation to say, yes, this veteran has sleep apnea, mild or moderate sleep apnea diagnosed right here. I believe that it is more likely than not connected to the time in service. And here's buddy statements that show he was having trouble sleeping his last 2 years in the military. And if you can make that argument, then you can win without a diagnosis in service a sleep apnea claim.
Yeah, sleep apnea is definitely I always say it's a coin toss, 50-50, and there's really no rhyme or reason to that. But regardless of whatever claim it is, an evidence-based claim is the way to go. Okay, looking at Luigi, I believe that's how you say your name. They say they're at 30% migraines secondary to tinnitus. What form do I have to fill out to increase to 50%? You could do it by with the form and submit it via quick submit, or you can just go on to va.gov and file an increase for migraines. And I want to say migraines at 50% causes economic instability. And what I've seen in the past is like a veteran's supervisor will write a lay statement saying, "Hey, here's the amount of sick days this person has took as a result of their migraines." That would be a solid example of a lay statement. And in addition to that statement, you probably want to go talk to your doctor and be prescribed medicine if you're not already on some. Like sumatriptan is a common medicine used for migraines. And so if you have those two things, submit the increase, and you meet the criteria for 50% per 38 CFR. John, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's a bit backwards. I've always hated this in the CFR. It talks about prostrating and completely prostrating. Um, it, a prostrating attack or a migraine that is prostrating means that you have to lay down, like you can't rise. Like prostrating means like you're out. So to be out and then completely out is like being knocked out and then being completely knocked out. It's like, what are we debating here? You know what I mean? Are we debating how knocked out you were? Was it completely world star or was it just accidental? You know what I mean? Like, and so prostrating and then completely prostrating is a bit odd. But to jump from 30 to 50%, it does also show, prostrating and then completely prostrating. That's some of the verbiage that you're going to see when you look at and pull it up, right? DBQ for migraines and go through that, right? Because that's how you're being evaluated. And you would want to show that you have that economic instability, right? And that you have these, this many completely prostrating attacks, and you're going to want to show that it is more severe since the last time that you applied. And so I would have, it's been a bit since I've submitted one of the migraine claims, but highly recommend pull up the DBQ for migraines and truly try and show the number of completely prostrating attacks that you have, in which you have to completely lay down, you cannot rise, you cannot work, you cannot do anything, you're in a room, it's dark, right, and it's completely prostrating. And so if that is your symptoms, if that is what you are experiencing, then you probably are warranted an increase from 30 to 50%. And then the last piece might be showing the economic instability, and at a minimum documenting it yourself on a 4138, stating, hey, this is how many days of work I've had to miss. This is how many paychecks I've had reduced because I didn't work full hours, whatever it may be, showing that symptom has gotten, that condition has gotten worse.
Oh yeah, I'll add more to the personal statement. I have not. Anytime I've worked with a veteran for a migraine claim, there has not been a single time where I did not have or advise the veteran to submit a personal statement. Migraines, I think that is the one claim where you will see lay statements and personal statements shine. Okay, moving down to Sergeant King. He says that we were answering his question while we had the whole echo debacle, and if the echo will go away when he rewatches the stream. King, no, it won't. What I want you to do, because we are about to end the stream, I want you to email me. Put Sergeant King in the subject line, so I'll see your email. I'll get to it first and ask your question again, because I want to make sure that your question got answered, especially because you were here the whole time, right? So definitely email me. I'll answer your question directly. And Crazy Pickles says, I love your name, by the way, says, can you be 100% and have your percentage reduced? John, take that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can.
And so if you're not 100% total and permanent for 20 years, it could be reduced, right? And even again, 100% total and permanent means that, you don't have any future exams, right? They have no reason to believe that any of your conditions are going to improve. These are static conditions, you're total and permanent, right? They'll get all of your 100% total and permanent benefits. But you could be reduced, right? Let's say you submit a claim and there's evidence on file at the VA and within the VBA that shows one of your conditions has improved. Theoretically, the VA could reduce you. Now, they're not going to schedule you for any future C&P exams like they would other veterans who they have reason to believe their conditions might improve. but 100% veteran can be reduced. One of the things that we look for, and it's actually one of the fastest ways to know if you're total and permanent, is when you receive a decision letter, if it states that you are eligible for education dependence. Oh man, now I'm backwards. Now I've definitely been talking too long. Dependence, yeah, Chapter 35, dependence, educational assistance, and or something like that. You know immediately that you are 100% total and permanent because only total and permanent veterans have dependents who are eligible for Chapter 35. So now I have to look it up because it's
Yeah, it's the
my sick brain.
Dependents Education Assistance,
Yeah.
Chapter 35, but they've changed the
Dependents
name many
Educational, yeah,
times.
Dependents Educational Assistance Program, Chapter 35. So,
Yeah.
and you're only eligible for that as a 100% total and permanent veteran, and it's always one of the first paragraphs at the top of your decision letter. It'll say, eligibility for this program is effective this day or whatever. And so unless you're 100% total and permanent, you can always be reduced, even if a condition is considered static. The VA may have a reason to go into that claim profile, then you theoretically could be reduced. And of course, there's always the exception. The VA can reduce anyone at any time if they find evidence of fraud. And of course, you could be service connected 100% for 40 years, and if they find evidence that it was based off of fraud, they reduce you, right? And you go to jail.
Oh yeah, I want to add to this. We'll answer one more question and then do a hard stop on the stream. When it comes to the VA reducing ratings, it all comes down to medical evidence, and this is a reason I always push veterans to seek health care, because you're just maintaining that paper trail, so to speak, and letting the VA know, hey, my back still hurts. Okay. On the flip side of that, if you walk into your doctor's office and say, you know what, I've miraculously been healed, you just gave them everything they need to go ahead and reduce your rating. So definitely seek the health care that you need. You're 100% for a reason. Seek healthcare. And the last question of the stream, and then we will say our goodbyes, is Vanessa. Her question is, I was awarded at 90% in October of 22. She wants to start another claim, and she's asking if we recommend that she waits a year. She doesn't want to poke the VA bear and then remove my 90. Thanks. I'll give you the short answer. John will go ahead and go into that. I will say this. If you have the evidence and there are more claims that you can submit the claim. Period. There's no, I would say waiting only harms you for that. If you have the evidence, meaning medical records, you have a diagnosis, you have everything you need and the Nexus, submit the claim. That's it.
Yeah, and it's also tough without seeing your claim file. Because let's say you were rated 30% for a condition that we believe you should have been rated for 70%. And that's the difference between 90 and 100%. Then you would immediately want to appeal that, right? You could submit a higher level review and make the argument that, hey, the evidence as it existed warranted a 70% rating for this condition, and you gave me 30%. I would like a 70%. And then boom, suddenly reapplying could have been absolutely the best thing that you could have done. Whereas maybe you get rated 50%. Let's say you've been getting, you just submitted a claim for mental health for PTSD, and you get rated at 50%, and your part of you thinks, okay, I'm looking at the symptoms, that's actually pretty accurate, and in 8 months it gets worse, then yeah, of course, submit right when it gets worse, because if the symptoms warrant a 70% rating, then you should apply for that. But if you think you were underrated initially, as opposed to reapplying, you could always submit a higher level review or a supplemental claim immediately with evidence to get it increased. But it really very much depends on the situation. Now, if you really do just think, I want to go obtain additional evidence, go to some more appointments in order to document my symptoms, then it may be beneficial to wait. That's a tough one without being able to independently look at the symptoms and talk to you about your specific symptoms. I keep thinking about mental health only because veterans do that a lot with mental health. They'll say, okay, I got rated at 50% and I really think I should have been rated at 70%. Should I refile for 70%, or should I start going to the VA hospital and documenting my disability with a counselor? And and that one is a tough one because it normally is a very fine line, sometimes between 50 and 70% for mental health, depending on the actual symptoms that the veteran is struggling with. I would urge you, much like Clay, if you have evidence or if you're struggling with a disability, get treatment for it as soon as you can and as often as you can in order to get better, and document that in a way that would also benefit your claim in the future. Yep. And
I was muted that whole time.
no, I
Okay.
heard you the whole time.
No, I know you did. They didn't because I
Oh,
didn't.
whoops.
Okay. All right, guys. Accredited. So Delk Graham's YouTube channel, I just linked it in the chat. Delk Graham is going to have their accredited VSOs do live chats more often. And so we're going to push the streams over to Delk Graham's YouTube channel. So be on the lookout for that schedule. Just as John said, I think John is extremely smart when it comes to VSO, but his words said that there are much smarter VSOs than he is at Delk Graham. So if you want that expertise, there's no other VSO out here that's doing live streams and spending their time helping veterans. And so definitely go over to Delk Graham's YouTube and check that out. John, thank you so much for coming on the stream. You kind of set that precedence for VSOs to come. Do you have any last words?
Just thanks for being here. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and so this is our mission, right? Our mission is to bring our collective knowledge to all veterans so that, the information that's in my head doesn't just sit there, right? I can use it and my team can use it to apply to a veteran's claim profile to maximize the benefits that they're eligible for. And our vision is to be able to do that for every single veteran in the country for free. And one of the ways this year we want to do that is by growing our YouTube, growing the videos, growing the content that we're creating in order to be able to reach more veterans so that they can either do it themselves or their veteran service organization watches and be like, you know what, I should bring that culture. I should bring that tireless effort in order to support the veteran that I'm working with, if I'm not already doing that for some reason. And of course many do. And so thank you for being on here. I highly encourage you to let us help you. If you need help with a veteran service organization, be patient with us. If you do choose to use us, because we will let you do it from the comfort of your home. And we also will fight tirelessly in order to help you collect evidence with medical providers, with your medical provider, with the VA, in order to help and grow your VA claim profile and substantiate every single disability that you have that is caused by your time in service. And so thanks for your time. And yeah, he is right. There's veteran service organizations as a whole. As an executive leader in the veterans nonprofit community, I am trying to spearhead and pioneer other organizations to be better about education and being present at the place and location that veterans need us the most, which is online, and not just telling veterans like, oh, drive to our office and we can answer your questions. Well, when you get there, there's 100 other veterans in line in front of you and you got to get back to work. You know what I mean? Like, and that's, we don't want barriers to veterans getting the benefits being knowledge, right? And so here we are. Thank you for being here and thank you for supporting. And I appreciate y'all's service. Thank you for everything that y'all do.
Oh, yeah. And again, guys, all donations go straight to Delk Graham. I'll go ahead and make that out. Just so you know, John, in about a week, YouTube takes about a week to update their live streams. And so we can go ahead and do that. And all donations go straight to Delk Graham. And guys, that's it. Thank you very much. Without your participation, without questions, there are no lives. Okay, so thank you for asking a question, especially those that put out personal information. We appreciate that. And yep, that's it. Thank you.